Whenever I bring up the unequal division of labor that exists in many marriages, especially when it comes to domestic labor and raising children, I get comments that say, not all men. And of course, I know it's not all men because I am married to a man who shares the load with me equally, or as equitably as we possibly can. He actively participates in parenting our kids. He participates in managing our household and the domestic labor and the chores, and we share the responsibility of finances equitably as well. And so it was not always like this. We definitely fell into the gender norms of me carrying the bulk of the domestic labor and him focusing on work early on. But we are about 2 years into course correcting here, and this is kind of what that looks like. For example, in our home, I do mornings by myself with all 4 kids. We have 4 children. I get them ready. I do breakfast. I get them dressed. I get them off to school and the bus. I do the whole 9. I also make sure they have lunches and snacks, etc. I help to coordinate all childcare for our kids. I help to manage extracurricular activities. When my husband comes home, because he gets home earlier than I do, he does afternoon activities with our kids, whether that's dance or taekwondo. He preps dinner and cooks dinner most nights. He helps with tubbies or does the tubbies by himself, and we do bedtime together. We try to share the load equally. Also, because he gets up in the morning before I go to work, he empties the dishwasher. He preps the kids' water bottles for me. That way, when I come downstairs, I have some of the things I need to have a successful morning and not feel like I'm doing it all by myself, right? And so we work really hard to share the load equitably. It is not 50-50. We don't do tit for tat. I often get accused of that, but that's not what it is to be in an equitable partnership. We both have things that we are in charge of, and if we can't do those things, we talk to each other to see how to coordinate best. My husband was down and out with the stomach bug for 2 days. I picked up the slack of the things that he would normally be doing. I took out the trash. I put the recycling on the corner of the street. I did all of the things that he might do on that given day because I knew he was down and out, and I know that if I were down and out, he would do the same thing for me. He would pack the kids' lunches. He would make sure they had their school forms. We do these things together in partnership because it's important that we work together to have an equitable relationship. And so oftentimes when I bring up the unequal division of labor that exists in many homes and men are screaming at me saying, not all men, I know that. The problem is it is the overwhelming majority of women's experience is that they take on the bulk of the domestic load. And when they bring it to their partner, they are met with defensiveness. And I too was met with defensiveness. My husband was looking at me like, what are you talking about? I'm always here. I'm always doing everything. You want me to do more? Like, what more could you want from me? But when we put it on paper, when we looked at all the things that happen in our house day to day, and we wrote down our names next to the things that we own because we did the fair play game, you could see how unequal the division of labor was. You could see that I owned 60 plus tasks out of 75 tasks, right? You could see that it was not fair. And so, yes, it's a hard conversation to have. No, it's not all men. But does this happen to many people? Do we fall into these traps? Yes, we do. So if you are newly married or about to be a new parent, I highly, highly recommend having these conversations, working to find an equitable division of labor and not falling into the trap that we fell into, which was he was prioritizing work, I was prioritizing family while working, and neither of us was having a good time.